Torah Life Ministries come out of the world. Messiah people seek the truth.
Jesus is spoken of, or Yeshua is spoken of as being the light that lights every man that comes into the world. Well, what does that mean? What does that mean? That he is the light that lights every man, because not every man really knows who he is, and not every man really receives him as Lord of their lives. But right before he left this world, Yeshua told his disciples, it's necessary for you that I go away, because if I go not away, the Comforter, or the Parakletos, the Helper, will not come to you, which was a reference to the Holy Spirit. But he said, if I go away, he will come, and when he comes, he will reprove the world. Not just the church, but he will reprove the world of sin and of righteousness and of judgment. Now, I have to develop this one thought at a time. There's three parts of man: the spirit, the soul, and the body. Prior to being born again, or prior to receiving a spiritual rebirth through Yeshua, the spirit is dead in trespasses and sins. And I believe that means relatively dead compared to the original spiritual condition of Adam and Eve. Because each one of these parts of man has a triune function. The body is made up of flesh, bones, and blood. The soul is made up of mind, will, and emotions. The spirit's functions, though, are communion with God, revelation from God, and conscience. Well, before a person is spiritually reborn, communion with God is cut off. I don't care what method you use. I don't care what esoteric, occult tool you implement. You cannot get to God by your own effort, because communion with God is cut off. That part of your spirit is non-functional. Revelation from God is almost non-existent unless God takes the initiative himself to break through that barrier and speak to someone's heart. But the one part of human beings that is still barely functional is conscience. And conscience is that inward sense of what is morally right and morally wrong, and it carries with it the desire to do what is morally right. It's very emphasized in New Age philosophy that all religions are different paths to the same God. And so a Christian automatically falls into a category of being narrow-minded, a bigot, who is just insensitive to the fact that other approaches are just as valid, etc., etc., which at the time when I was a yoga teacher seemed like the most loving way to approach the subject of religion, to validate every worldview and to say that all are legitimate, that all are equally valid ways of reaching ultimate reality. That seemed to make logical sense. In the book In Search of the True Light, this is one of the first things I try to establish, is the nature of truth. And here's the big, heavy question. Is truth subjective or objective? What do I mean by that? Well, subjective truth means we can all have our own truth. You can have your truth, I can have my truth, and even if they seem to conflict with each other, on an ultimate level, it's all the same anyway, so you can be right and I can be right simultaneously. But if truth is objective, then truth is the same for everyone, regardless of whether or not it is recognized. And of course, as a Christian, I contend that truth is objective, not subjective. The politically, religiously correct way of looking at it is that truth is subjective, and that seems to harmonize the whole world. However, let me show how illogical that point of view is by transferring it from religion back into the realm of science. Now, this generation prides itself on scientific achievement. But how do scientists arrive at definite conclusions? By experimentation and observation. They go through all these possible scenarios And when they find that something isn't correct or isn't right, they discard it, and they finally get through all the mess of the wrong ideas to the golden nugget of real, pure truth. Now, why discard the scientific method when it comes to spirituality? Why celebrate it in the realm of the natural and reject it in the realm of the supernatural? Let me give an example. In the 2nd century, a man named Ptolemy, an astronomer and geographer, presented the idea that the Earth was the center of the solar system. And it became, well, it was already, and it became even more so, a celebrated idea that everyone embraced, to the point where if you offered a different point of view, you might suffer death as a result. 1,000 years later, Copernicus, at the end of his life, just in case that happened, he released his idea that no, it's a heliocentric solar system. The sun is at the center and the planets revolve around the sun. While the predominant belief was that no, the sun revolved around the planet Earth. Now, just suppose that those two men were contemporaries, and just suppose they sat in a room together discussing their ideas. Is it even remotely logical that Ptolemy could say to Copernicus, you know, you can have your truth and I can have my truth, and we can both be right simultaneously? Well, of course not. That's utterly absurd. Either the earth is the center or the sun is the center, but both ideas cannot be right simultaneously. Well, somebody's contention may be, well, I love God. I love God just like you love God. But I worship God just like you worship God. But wait a second, there's a huge difference between being a worshiper of God and being a true worshiper of God.
There is so much misconception and deception out there today, and it takes somebody who knows the New Age world, who knows the world of yoga, to come out of that and now be a believer in Messiah, to understand the real way we should be living and the way we should be thinking. You can't have these people that are brought up in a church, they don't know what those people think.